Okay, greetings and welcome back. In this video, we are going to wrap up our class blueprint example by creating a wall sconce that we can actively turn on and off by pressing a key. So here inside my blueprints folder in the content browser, you can see my wall sconce. I could double click this and open up the blueprint editor. We've done that a few times. But also in my level, we've already added a copy of this. So I'm going to show you another way to get to that. If I select any blueprint in the actual scene or any class blueprint, if we take a look inside the details panel, you'll notice there's a blueprint category. And you can see there's a tiny little edit button right there next to its name. If we click that, that will open up the blueprint editor. So it's just another way to get to what you want. Another way even beyond that is, remember the blueprints menu we were using before? So we can, well, that would actually just be for creating. So let's just go back and click on our edit button, and that'll show this. Okay, so what we have at this point is a light where if we get close to it, it turns on. As we move away, it switches back off. And just really, really quickly, I'll demo that. I'll make my view over here kind of nice and small. So if you want to watch the data kind of flowing through the network, you can. So you see, boom, light turns on, move away, light turns off. Very, very nice, but not super useful. We want to be able to turn this light on and leave it on if we want to. Now, this process requires that we activate the ability for this blueprint to receive input. So what I'm going to do for starters is disconnect some wires. So here, coming out of our begin overlap, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and click on this output and click on this output. Again, that's Alt clicking and that snips those wires. Now, I'm just going to left drag and marquee select to grab all these nodes and then drag them right out of the way. We'll deal with those here in a minute. We want to do a couple of fancy things. When we overlap our trigger volume, when we get close to this light, we want to activate the ability to turn the light on and off. Now, I'll warn you, this is a topic that could get fairly complicated. If you really wanted to, like if you're doing this for multiplayer, you'd have to keep track of exactly which player was actually close to it and had the ability to interact with it as opposed to the ones that didn't. And it gets kind of complicated pretty quickly. For our purposes, we're going to keep this extremely simple. What I want you to do is on your on-component begin overlap, I want you to drag a wire out and just type in the word input. And just think about it that way. You don't exactly know what node you need, you just know what you want to do. You want to handle some sort of input from the player. So drag out a wire and type input, or actually it would help if I could spell input instead of ipnut. So input, there we go. And you see enable input, and there's a little tooltip, pushes this actor onto the stack of input being handled by the player controller. Basically, this means that we can receive input, which is great. Now, we need to tell it what player controller to listen to. And a player controller is literally the device that drives whatever it is you're playing through the level. So it could be your character or battleship or whatever. We need to get a reference to who we are when we're playing. So what I'm going to do is actually work in the other direction. Up to now, we have dragged wires out kind of to the right and then created nodes from that. Now I'm going to drag one out from an input off to the left. And again, let's just assume we don't know what node we need. We only know what we want. We want a player controller. So let's just try searching for player controller. Oh, I didn't even get that far. And we have get player controller. So we click on that and we see get player controller for player index 0. That is going to be essentially player 1 because it's a 0-based system. Player index 0 is us. So that's perfect. That already works. Now, when we leave the trigger volume, we want this input to go away. Oh, actually, you know what? Before I go into that, I just want to make a quick mention here. Notice that our target is currently set to self. Again, this is one of those terminologies that any programmers in the room will be like, oh no, that makes perfect sense. A reference to self means we are literally talking to this blueprint actor, this class blueprint being our wall sconce. So we are literally saying that, or actually I guess you could say, the wall sconce is saying, I am enabling input on myself. So that is what he's doing at this point. So when we step away from the trigger volume, we want to disable that input. So I'm just going to drag a wire off like so. And let's say again, we don't know that it's called disable, but we know it has to do with input. And there's disable input. Now to be all careful in controlling it, we should go ahead and connect our player controller back to this to make sure we're talking to the same reference. I mean, it's going to be player 0 either way. We could just as easily make a copy, like with Control-C, Control-V, and plug that in. It's really just a question of what you think looks better. I'm not going to get into visual scripting coding standards in this video, but we'll go ahead and plug the same node into both locations. They do the same job either way. So this will actually get input going, but that's only a small part of what we want to do. Now that we are listening for input, here's how easy this is actually. I'm going to right click, just an empty space with nothing selected, and I'm going to tap F, the F key. And notice under key events, these are events for when the F key is pressed or released. So we click this, and on pressed, we want to toggle visibility. That's it, really. I mean, it's that simple. We're saying when you get close to the trigger, or actually when you enter the trigger volume or when you get close to the light, enable input, then we can listen to the F key. And when you leave, disable that input so we're no longer listening to the F key. Let's give it a quick test, and I'll slide this out of the view for just a moment, and we'll hit play. So let's fly up, and now I'm tapping F, and we can turn the light on and off. But if I fly away across the room, I'm hitting F, I don't know if you can hear that, and nothing's happening. If I get close again, everything works once again. But if I fly away, it stops working. So our system is great, but there's one last thing we didn't yet integrate into it, and that was that helpful message that we had earlier. So if you remember, back in our components, we created that text render component that was a quote-unquote helpful message. I'm going to hold down Control and drag a reference to that into my graph. And then we'll drag a wire off this and type out toggle. And again, we'll just choose toggle visibility, just like we've been doing for our light. After we enable input, we will toggle visibility. And after we disable input, we'll toggle it again. That's it. We're done. That was easy. And we could do this so we're not crossing any wires, so everything looks all nice and pretty. Of course, we're kind of crossing some there, but I'm not going to beat myself up too much for that. So let's go ahead and compile, and let's test this out. So now I get close to the light, press F to toggle, and it goes away when we're out of range. Okay, now technically we're done at this point. If you made it this far, congratulations. If you're stuck for some reason, take a look at my entire network. If you need to, pause the video so that you can see everything that I've connected here. Now, what we're going to do real quick, just for squeezing in one more technique that will be super useful to you, is I'm going to drag a marquee selection box around this upper portion, and I'm going to tap the C key, and that wraps this up in a comment box. And we're going to write a clever comment that explains what this is doing. So when we enter the trigger volume, enable input, and show the helpful message. And then I guess if we really wanted to be super precise, actually, I'll make sure I get my cursor right where it needs to be, and we'll say disable when we exit. There we go. Now the great thing about comment boxes is they're super configurable. So if we want to, we can take that comment color and we can make it any color of the rainbow. We can add a little bit of alpha to it. Let's make this one blue for no other reason than I want to. And if we move that around, so you'll notice we can resize it, but if right there along that comment line, we can drag this around and the whole network comes along. So it's a really nice organization feature. Then we'll drag a box around these guys. So again, that's left mouse drag from our key selection, tap the C key, and we'll say F key input handling, which is slightly less descriptive, but it gets the point across that you could write a comment in there. And then just because we want to, we'll make this one red. So there we go. Now with that, we're done. Let's go ahead and compile. We'll save our blueprint. We can close out the editor entirely. And now here is where we get to show off how cool this system really is. So we have this one light that works great. Let's go ahead and just right here from the content browser, I'm going to drag a copy of this onto the wall. And we need to rotate it 90 degrees so it sticks out in the proper direction from the wall. But then, you know, just because we can, let's come over here and we'll put one here on this part of the wall, and we'll put one over here on this part of the wall, and then let's say we want one over here for I don't even know what reason, but it would be great if we had one. It would be like, we should have called this cowbell, so we could have said, we need more cowbell, right? So now with that, let's go ahead and just give this a quick test. I didn't have to recompile, I didn't have to change any code. We get close to this, and it says press F to toggle, so we can toggle that one. We can fly over to this one, and we can turn it on, and it actually looks pretty cool with the normal map and everything. And then we can come over to this one, and turn it on, and turn it on, and turn it on, and they just keep working. So that actually goes all the way through the creation of a class blueprint, and you can see how useful that is, particularly for reusing your code in multiple places. And you'll notice how each one works wonderfully and independently of all the others, which is exceedingly useful. And that's going to wrap things up for this video. In the next video, I'm going to squeeze in just one more thing, and we'll talk about that construction script that we didn't get a chance to look at earlier, and I'll show you how we can use that to make an even more configurable system for our lights. But that will wrap things up for this video. Thank you very much.